Well, today, November 25th, is the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. And to talk to us a bit more about that, I'm joined now from London by Jacqui Hunt. You're the European Director for Equality Now. Thank you so much for joining us, Jacqui. One of the most shocking statistics that I've seen is that 1 in 3 women worldwide has experienced physical or sexual violence, mostly by an intimate partner. Tell us about that.
Yes, unfortunately, violence against women happens all the time, and a lot of it has disappeared now because it's become so normalized. What we have to do is redouble our efforts to make sure that these statistics end and that violence against women ends in the home and outside the home as well.
Now, in some countries, the numbers are even much worse. Some countries say up to 7 out of 10 women are facing abuse. Which countries in particular are worst hit?
I think we have to look at all countries and all our responsibility for ending violence against women. And we have to see that we're a very interconnected world and that we can inspire people from various countries to treat women and girls better in other places as well. So we have to really make this a joint effort and make sure that we're all involved to end violence against women and girls.
But how do you communicate that kind of joint effort? What concretely can be done?
I think a lot can be concretely done and a lot of progress has been made. For example, governments are changing laws that otherwise permit violence against women. So there has been a lot of progress there in changing laws on violence against women. So violence is no longer permitted. That in turn sends a signal from governments, from us all, from international society that violence is unacceptable. Once you start getting that message across, you can then make sure that you implement those laws, that we change those attitudes in society, and then we also change behaviors.
But are those laws enough to change attitudes, or do you think more of a cultural shift perhaps is needed?
Yes, definitely a cultural shift is needed, but law is where it starts. So at least there's a base so women can feel protected and claim their rights. And also it's a very important signal that governments send. They themselves, they will say violence is unacceptable. And that too informs us in our opinion. But we need to work harder in our communities, in the media, in our schools. We need to be talking about relationships and appropriate relationships right from the very beginning so that we change attitudes.
What about the victims themselves, women who are hurt by violence every day? What can they do?
Well, there's a lot of work being done by survivors of violence who are very, very courageously speaking out when they feel they're able, to also explain the impact on them and also explain what can be done to help the situation better. So these are very brave women, and what we need to be doing is supporting them for when they feel able to speak out. And if they don't feel able to speak out, we need to be advocating also on their behalf.
So you talk about places for these women to go to be able to speak out, but some women, especially if they're experiencing domestic violence, are very rightly afraid. What more can be done to help them?
One of the things that I think is very critical at the moment in this country and other parts of the world is specialist services for these women. The funding is being cut back. A lot of women have nowhere to go if they're in very difficult situations and no one to help them through those situations. And that is causing enormous harm to them and to society as a whole. So what we need to be doing is taking this seriously, funding also those very specialist services to help women escape those situations at the same time as working on advocacy to stop the violence and hold those who commit violence accountable.
What about the cost? What about the consequences of violence against women?
There's a huge cost for all of us on violence against women. There's not just the cost to the woman herself, but there's a consequence to the families of those women. There's a consequence to us as a society. If you think how much money it takes to spend extra money in hospital, law enforcement, absences from work, I think we shouldn't look at it in those kind of cold costs. We need to look at the real cost to the women, but to us as a society too. What is the cost on us if we're letting this violence happen and we're not doing enough to address it?
What are your thoughts about this kind of a UN-sponsored day for the elimination of violence against women? What can that do, really?
I take your point that obviously we're not going to change everything in one day, but I think these days are really important to focus our attention, to focus the world's attention, and to commit to redouble our efforts to actually take action, to really think, okay, what do we need to do? How can we, as individuals, but also as governments and societies, change those laws? How can we work on laws? How can we work on impact? How can we work on supporting survivors? How can we talk to communities that are affected and move away and accelerate the way forward so that we can really address this? So next year, when we have this day, we can say, okay, we looked at that, we made progress, we knew what we were doing, and we're really going to make it happen.
All right, Jacqui, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. That's Jacqui Hunt there, the European Director for Equality Now in London.